I'm Sienna. I'm the kid.
I'm Sarah. I'm the mom.
This is Queer Kid Straight Mom.
Let's talk.
Welcome back to Queer Kids Straight Mom. Today we are talking about this phenomenon that we've seen in the past few years where it seems that shows with queer female leads are being canceled disproportionately, even to other queer shows, which it often feels like are being canceled disproportionately. So, like a couple of examples that we had talked about on the show before when we reviewed some queer TV shows: First Kill, A League of Their Own, Gentleman Jack, were all shows that we watched for this.
And there have been a couple of other relatively prominent, or some shows based on very popular franchises. There was a Willow kind of reboot TV show situation on Disney Plus that came out in maybe 2021 or so, that got one season and then was canceled. And then there was also the Star Wars show, The Acolyte, that was canceled after one season. Both kind of got middling reviews, but I've also heard from, multiple sources, people who have enjoyed both those fandoms for a long time, that, well, they're perfectly interesting, fun pieces of media if you kind of take them separately from these franchises that they were building off of, that, you kind of have to enjoy them as a separate thing, and that maybe they did not appeal to that sort of hardcore traditional nerd fan base of those fandoms.
Yeah, that maybe marketing them to those fan bases and then having them realize there are gay characters was problematic. Although, I mean, how else can you make a show like that successful if you don't?
Well, I was just thinking that, right? That, I mean, if there's a new story that you want to tell, like, maybe it should just be its own story, right? It doesn't have to be a Willow sequel, or it doesn't have to be in the Star Wars universe. Like, if you're one of these big companies who owns these franchises, you can also invest in, like, new stories. But I'm sure they just want the easy lift of, look, it's a Willow show. Look, it's a Star Wars show.
Right. This could roll very easily into a conversation about the reliance on sequels.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was doing a little research on this, and one of the sources I found from them, this article, "Why Are So Many TV Shows About Queer Women Getting the Axe" by Sarah Clements. This was in 2022. This has been going on for a few years. She points out that 21 of the 30 shows with LGBTQ plus characters that had been canceled recently featured queer women characters. So, like I said, even beyond like just queer shows being canceled, when there is a queer female lead, it's more likely to be canceled. And she also pointed out, this was kind of interesting, that First Kill, which was a popular show, people liked it, actually had more hours of collective viewing than Heartstopper.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, Heartstopper got another couple of seasons pretty quickly, which, like, I love Heartstopper. It should have. But the disparity between it was not a matter of popularity that made that decision. And she points out that, like, sort of my metrics that we don't know about, like, but there are other things like bingeability, the staying power, or like people are actually spending more time watching this in the long run. And, for advertising purposes, I don't know, maybe that makes it more lucrative for them. But shows are also largely marketed to a straight white male point of view, and that can hurt their appeal to a more diverse audience. She points out that, like with First Kill, they focus on the relationship, but not the things about the show that might be appealing to people that are really into monster stories or vampire stories or that kind of thing.
Yeah, like what I thought was fun about First Kill is that it had this very kind of traditional special effects thing going for it that people are complaining about all the time, right? That, everything's all crappy CGI. And I thought the special effects in First Kill were, like, very campy and fun.
Yeah, and that element wasn't necessarily emphasized.
I think First Kill is a really good example of the way queer shows can be set up for failure in the way that things are marketed to audiences, right? Because they weren't emphasizing the action aspect of it. They weren't, like, treating it like it was an action TV show, which, to be fair, like, the relationship was, like, kind of the main focus. But that means that you're not going to draw your kind of straight male audiences in because they're like, it's just a romance. And, it's not interested in, like, overly sexualizing the main characters and, like, presenting their relationship in a way that sort of is designed to draw that male gaze, like, oh, two hot women having hot sex with each other. Wasn't interested in doing that, so there wasn't that aspect of appeal. As we have seen, especially recently, a lot of straight women are really uninterested in watching shows about two women in a relationship. And so, because straight women are sort of typically the market for romances, marketing it as a romance between two women was never going to be as big of a draw for that audience either. And so ultimately then the sliver of the audience that you have left in the way that traditional marketing handles these things ends up being really small.
Yeah. And these are, decisions that these streaming services are making that kind of undermine the success, like you said, of these shows. Rebecca Jackson from University of Georgia Department of Film and Theater Studies says, quote, "Rainbow capitalism explains why these shows are paraded out during Pride season and then quickly chopped. To put it simply, it is popular to feign support for the lesbian queer community during Pride season, but a genuine commitment to queer programming problematizes systems of power."
Which, like, a really good example of that would also be, we've talked about Our Flag Means Death on here before, and while it's not specifically a show about queer women, like the leads are two queer men, I would also describe it as like a very queer show in that it does reflect like a lot of sort of queer ideas about found family and all that, and also a lot of different queer identities. You have bi characters, you have trans characters, you have gender nonconforming characters, you have queer women. Like, you've really got a broad spectrum reflected in like a fairly small cast. So to me, it's a very not just gay show, but like a queer show. And it was incredibly, incredibly popular when it was first released. It was like on top of the streaming charts for like, multiple weeks. I think it was like 10 weeks or something, even after the season finale. So it really, really popular. And then it took them ages to formally renew it, like a couple months after it ended, as people are like, is it going to get renewed? Like, it ended on this big cliffhanger. Is it getting renewed? What's going on? And they finally renew it for season 2 and then end up canceling it after season 2, which for why was really, really devastating because it didn't, it ended on kind of a satisfying note, but it felt a little bit rushed. And then what should HBO do on their Instagram account but this year feature the costuming from Our Flag Means Death on their Instagram Pride post? Like, you killed the show about queer people, and yet you want to include it, and you're looking at how queer our shows are post.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's impressive.
That's horrendous.
Yeah. Not cool, HBO. And yeah, that the decision to wrap it up after season 2, like, it was good, but the way too much, like, they just tried to squeeze way too much in. And so then that ended up hurting the quality of the show, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, there are all these little plot hooks, right, that you can see. Like, this was meant to spool out more, and I think that's true of lots of shows. It's maybe one of the pitfalls of this streaming television era. Like, there are plenty of advantages: higher quality, they're getting better actors, they have much higher budgets, but also there's so much stuff being churned out all the time, and some of it is really good. And then frequently, though, it ends up getting canceled for these kind of black box metrics. What's going on inside these studios that's making them cancel this very popular, very well reviewed show? And then either you get stuck with a show that ends on a cliffhanger, or what feels like is happening more and more often is that they just cram all of this stuff into the last season, trying to treat viewers fairly, right? Because understandably, as a creative, you're like, I want viewers to not be left hanging, to get a full story, but it ends up really hurting the story.
Yeah. Well, especially because, like, the beauty and appeal of a lot of those kinds of stories is the slow development of a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it trying to like form and progress as challenges come. And so like wrapping it up too quickly takes away part of what made it a great story.
And that one of the advantages of the television format also is that you can have an episode that's just kind of silly, right? That where it's not necessarily contributing to the overall plot, but it does really useful characterization. You see how these characters react and all. I mean, we make fun of holiday episodes, right? But they can be really fun.
Mm-hmm.
And you completely lose that if you rush things, and don't even get me started on how like short television series are now. And that's then also a problem, but not really super relevant here.
Yeah.
But point being that then you have all of these queer stories that get told, all right, one season, or this is your last season, wrap it up. And then the queer story isn't told to its full potential.
Yeah. So this is interesting. You were just saying that about Our Flag Means Death not being, explicitly like queer female leads, but having a lot of representation of different queer identities in there, including female queer identities. And that actually moves nicely into this next article from Glamour UK in September of 2023. And Colleen Hamilton wrote this, and she was talking about A League of Their Own when she said this. But I feel like it really kind of speaks to the storylines and characters in Our Flag Means Death too, that a lot of these stories that get canceled. And like I said, she's speaking to A League of Their Own. What would it mean to move the center of your own life? What if your desires were not a source of shame, but a portal? Such questions are threatening to heteropatriarchy, particularly when they include examinations of interracial solidarity and difference.
Mhm.
And I feel like a lot of those questions are things that you would consider in Our Flag Means Death.
This is really interesting also because now that you say that, I'm realizing that I think queer media tends to be a lot more likely to depict interracial relationships, which probably stems from the fact that queer people are more likely to be in interracial relationships for a variety of reasons, probably. But I think almost all of these shows that we've talked about, Our Flag Means Death, A League of Their Own, not in the main relationship, but in some of the side characters, First Kill and Owl House, which is a different one that we haven't mentioned yet, but that's another TV show that got kind of abruptly canceled with queer female leads. And then I think maybe The Acolyte as well. They're all featuring interracial relationships.
Interesting. So something to that. A lot of things coming together, which, I mean, like she is saying in that point, these are stories where people, whether it's the queerness, whether it's the racial aspect, whether it's one being a metaphor for the other, whatever it is, about this is the person that I want to be with, and I should be able to own that and be with that person and have that be okay, and that is a really threatening concept for maintaining this nice, neat patriarchal system that we have going.
And
It works so well for everybody.
Arguably, right, that they're more subversive in ways that I think the really popular shows about queer men tend not to be. Like the shows about queer men, again, not that they're not really well done, but that something like Heated Rivalry or something like Heartstopper is very straightforward in the homophobia that it deals with. That we're talking about, I'm surrounded by people who are bullying me for being gay, and that's bad. And not that they don't handle those topics with nuance, but that ultimately is pretty straightforward. Where a lot of, I think, these shows about queer women are subverting deeper expectations, right? That A League of Their Own, the main character is married. I mean, it really speaks to this kind of male idea that you go off to war and now the women have taken over the society and I mean, that is literally the entire reason that women were allowed to play baseball back then, is that there were no men around.
Right.
I mean, Gentleman Jack is, of course, about a very, very masculine presenting lesbian who is very kind of assertive, like takes on a much more male-coded role in society. Our Flag Means Death is fundamentally about all of these characters who have sort of abandoned their prescribed places in society. So there's this much more subversive aspect to a lot of it.
That's actually funny about A League of Their Own. Like the most terrifying thing to men is like, what if we all go away and they realize they like each other more than they like us?
Have you seen? There's a poster. We'll have to post this on the Instagram maybe, but there's like this old timey poster that my constitutional law professor showed us from when they were debating is it 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote? When they were debating that. And it's a picture of these two girls kissing, and it said, the ladies are doing all the fellas' jobs now. And it's like, that's a reason to not support the 19th Amendment, because it'll turn them all into lesbians, I guess.
Wow. Sounds like there's a lot of insecurity
Yeah.
among men. Yeah. And I think, to the point about Heartstopper and Heated Rivalry, and I love both of those shows. And I think the characters are great and the acting is great. But I mean, yeah, there is an element of, I think it's interesting about both of them that you have one like explicitly gay character in the couple, and then one like very conventionally masculine bisexual character. So like he can be in this relationship, but he can also be palatable to women, right? Because it doesn't work in like infractions, but it's like, oh, he's half a normal guy that I could be with,
Right.
and half a gay guy. And that I think is just easier to package, even probably to other men. Like, well, he's part normal.
Yeah, and that also that's very much set up as, they're just normal people in society who want to be normal people in society, and they're just like you and me, and they just so happen to be gay.
Yeah.
And that's very much the way that they're packaged to a straight audience. And again, there is value in that because a lot of people haven't gotten past their preconceived notion that queer people are like unnatural and not a normal part of society.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily how queer people themselves would always choose to be portrayed in media. I think you see that in a lot of the less sort of mainstream media produced by queer people. That tends to be a lot of books and a lot of graphic novels because those are easier to publish than like a full-on TV show. There's a lot more breadth to the queer experience than those two sort of mainstream shows, and it seems like any time you try to break into the mainstream with some of those ideas that they immediately get shut down.
And there's that like acceptability thing, right? Like you see it with race all the time. Like, oh, well, he's such a well-spoken young man in a suit. And that, no, people don't want to be represented by your idea of what makes them like you.
Right. Yeah, that assimilation into the mainstream culture is not always the goal. And maybe that's where this fundamentally comes from, is that in an industry where what gets produced and what gets continued to be produced is defined by what is acceptable and what is money-making and what is popular, that things that push the mainstream too much are just never going to be allowed.
That acceptability thing probably does have a lot to do with the difference in accepting unconventional male stories rather than unconventional female stories, even though that seems a little bit counterintuitive because the range of quote unquote acceptable masculinity is so narrow. It seems like people would be less likely to accept that, but I guess misogyny works in mysterious ways. Yeah, so another thing that has brought this topic to the forefront a lot lately is the negative reaction that a lot of people had to Bridgerton announcing that they were going to have a lesbian storyline.
Including specifically amongst people who had been Bridgerton fans and also been obsessed with heated rivalry.
So the article that I was reading from The Signal, Lake DiStefano, and this is from April of 26, is talking about that Bridgerton versus heated rivalry sort of thing that was happening, and says, quote, "While there are exceptions like all things, I would not face much contention were I to assert the fact that the primary fan base for these shows, excluding queer fans, is straight women." Which I think is true. And I haven't ever watched Bridgerton, so I didn't really have any kind of opinion on this announcement of the storyline other than like, that's great. Representation is good. But DiStefano goes on to say, queer people, it seems, are only ever tolerated when they can provide some sexual gratification. And we are still at a place where people assess the merit of queer art according to their own standards of what they deem appealing.
Yeah, I think we have put in some effort in this podcast trying not to, denounce all the straight women who, again, I do believe that it can reflect on gender identity in some interesting ways.
For me personally, as a straight woman, I thought there was some really interesting exploration of like the role that intimacy, not sexual intimacy, but emotional intimacy plays as a relationship developed and how important that is as an element of a relationship. The way, I think the way that it was written for the book and the TV show, really the way it works from a physical relationship into a more developed relationship lets you see how important that is. And I think it did it in a way that I don't always see. And so, like, for me, it was really powerful for that reason.
And I think it was you partially enjoyed it just because it's a really interesting relationship and a well-crafted TV show, not because they're gay.
Right. And I like sports. And so there's like sporty stuff. And I mean, those are like, yes, those are really attractive, compelling actors. Like that certainly helps. But yeah, there is a lot of stuff that has come up comparing those two phenomena, Bridgerton versus heated rivalry, that does make it look a lot like it's just, oh, this is so hot.
Right.
But it wouldn't be hot if I was just watching women.
Right.
I am kind of like stuck on this a little bit, and this is kind of the place where I bring this perspective, and we talk about this a little. And I'm not at all defending the people that are like fetishizing gay relationships or anything like that. But what if part of it is, because I'm just thinking about like, okay, from my straight point of view, what if some of it is you want to watch a romance, seeing, I guess, whoever you identify with as the protagonist, which in a straight romance would be, for me, the woman, watching that relationship with somebody that you identify with a person that you find attractive. I relate to this person, and so I like watching them fall in love with this romantic lead that I find attractive. Because I probably enjoy a traditional straight rom-com less if I find the male lead not attractive or kind of annoying or whatever. I wouldn't be into him, so this isn't as fun to watch, right? So maybe that's not fair because I love heated rivalry and
You don't relate to Shane or Ilya?
well, I probably relate to Ilya more as I'm not obnoxious like not always obnoxious like he is. I certainly have always taken like relationships more seriously than he does until he is serious and exclusive with Shane. But I relate to probably just his process more than Shane's. But I don't know that I would respond super like excitedly to either of them at a bar.
Right.
So,
Well, and also
maybe that's maybe that's not a good theory.
Also, that I've seen a lot of people discussing, they like the term the cuck chair, where you're watching people have sex because you think it's hot. That people describe themselves as like perceiving the two of them having sex, not necessarily like, oh, I think it would be so hot to have sex with Ilya.
Okay.
I mean, and I also, even let's give some credence to that, right? Like maybe that's just your process for enjoying romance. It's not the nature of it being two men. It's that, oh, I find one of these guys kind of attractive, and that makes it more enjoyable for me to watch the romance. Like, oh, okay, fine. I think that's totally normal. And you can say that without being weird about it, that it's not like the two men part that's so attractive to you. Fine, great. Also, not everything has to be for you is the thing.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much entitlement. I mean, we've talked about this in the way that the fan base has responded to heated rivalry overall, but also there's so much entitlement in that reaction to the Bridgerton announcement that, guys, there are people who will really enjoy watching a relationship between these two female characters. Just because you don't doesn't mean that it's somehow a wrong decision or a bad creative decision, because not everything has to be about you as a straight lady.
I mean, that's capitalism, right? And I know how much you love capitalism. But from a marketing perspective, like maybe people subconsciously have that attitude because they're like, hey, my group is the one that's going to spend the most money on these things. So our opinion is the most important.
I guess, but
I don't know.
like that's so mean. Like, stop. Like, why are you doing that?
Stop. Just stop. Yeah, I don't know, but it is a thing that is happening. And I don't like, I kind of came up with that theory because like I certainly would not watch something because it had a lesbian couple in it. And I have watched shows with queer women couples that I've been like, oh, I love this couple. Like, I'm so excited for them. It might not be as compelling to me just because I am a woman that is attracted to men. And so I'm fascinated by that process. Like, watching two men learn more about each other is really interesting to me because it's like a window. Like we've talked about this
Right,
before. It's a little bit of a window.
Well, it's not necessarily something that you have direct personal experience with, so it makes sense that it's interesting to learn about people that are different from you. Like, that's actually normal and healthy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I also get, like, for me, I tend to struggle a little bit more with stories about, like, intimate relationships between women, because for me, that brings up, like, some body image issues and some gender weirdness and, like, comparing my own life to their lives. So I do understand that, but I also consume media that is about people of all different identities because, again, I'm not only looking for one thing in the stories that I consume.
Yeah. That actually brings up another interesting point that I am fascinated by how much this comes into it. I don't know if it's conscious for a lot of people, but when you said that about body image, like I think that is, and we talked about that a little bit with heated rivalry too, that like for women, like it's nice to watch this love story without having to compare yourself to the woman. And I think there is something about, especially usually when you see lesbian couples portrayed in movies or TV shows, they're both going to be really attractive, right? And so, yeah, I mean, there probably is an element, like if I was really, really super honest about it, there probably is an element that's like, what's worse than watching one woman that looks better than me, watching two women that look better than me? So maybe there is something to that.
Yeah, and it's like I said, I do think that's legitimate, and I don't want to dismiss that. It's just that I also think that the way that people are reacting as all of this stuff kind of unspools more makes it harder and harder to give credence to. Oh yeah, that's the only reason that you'll watch Heated Rivalry, but you won't watch Bridgerton.
Yeah, no, I think there are a lot of other things going on. I think all of these things that we talked about have, like, all of the points that these people made in these articles are valid. I think there is a lot of societal backlash to women doing unconventional things. I think that a lot of these stories, in the nature of being queer stories, especially in, A League of Their Own or Bridgerton, taking place in the past where there were more specific gender roles, I think that it feels really subversive to have women in those settings not doing what women were supposed to be doing.
And also, I think that we haven't quite explicitly said this as explicitly as it should be said. Like we've touched on it a little bit, but the fact that queer women can have a full and complete life that does not involve a man in any way just triggers people.
Men don't like that.
Men don't like that, but I think there are a lot of women who don't like it either. I think there are a lot of women who watch and they're like, I can't even imagine that. How is that even possible?
Well, I think there's some of that, and I think there is probably, this is such a random sounding comparison, but part of the reason I get so mad at people with their dogs off their leashes in places where dogs are supposed to be on leashes is because my dog would love to be off her leash here. And I'm so mad that you just get to ignore that and do what you want to do. And it just makes me like, oh, that's not fair. And I bet some of these women somewhere deep inside are like, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
But I can't.
I think a lot of women are very explicit about that, which is a separate conversation because I find that mildly annoying when women say that also. But yeah, absolutely. I think there are plenty of women who are like, I want to have a life that's free and not having a man telling me what to do and the male gaze controlling my entire life. And I've said before, right, that I also think that's why men can find, media about queer men so triggering is because they're like, well, I want to be able to paint my nails.
Yeah. Or wear the whatever, or, I mean, it's got to be a lot of work. It is a lot of work being a woman, but those are things that are familiar to me. I look at men and it's like, to have to act in this societally acceptable way all the time. At least I can cry when I'm sad.
Right?
So,
yeah, I do think that a society-wide misogyny combined with that experience of people seeing people who are able to be free in a way that they can't be, and it makes them mad. And also combined with the fact that these shows are being marketed as romances to an audience that is predominantly straight women, and then straight women, for whatever reason, not wanting to watch a show about lesbians, puts, I think, sapphic shows in a really hard spot.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things coming together that are kind of creating this.
There's one other thing I would throw out too that I don't think is unique to shows about queer women. I think it's true for really any show that features a marginalized character in a significant role, maybe with the exception of cisgender women. I don't think this is just because there's enough media about cisgender women that it's not necessarily an issue in the same way. But I feel like there's this trend of especially large franchises, right? So Marvel movies, Star Wars movies, Disney princess movies. Maybe this is just a Disney problem. But that they will do something really kind of, oh no, it's happening with the Odyssey too, I lied. Well, they'll do something kind of subversive or interesting or dramatic with the casting, like casting a black girl as Ariel or casting a Latina woman as Snow White or casting a black woman as Helen of Troy or featuring a queer romance and make a big deal of it in the marketing, and it's a whole thing, and it creates all of this drama around the release of the movie, which is then good for the movie because more people go to see it in theaters just so they can complain about it, and it's getting all this chatter online, and that's the old saying that any news is good news, any attention that you're getting is good attention in marketing. And then they put out a really crappy product, and then all of these actors get all of this hate, like the way that people are treating those Disney movie actresses, because like The Little Mermaid and Snow White remakes, to the best of my knowledge, were both like pretty crappy. And then those women get treated like it's their fault for the movie being crappy. And then it's like, oh, well, they just wanted to be woke. And now look at what happens when you make a woke movie. And then inclusivity and diverse casting gets blamed as the reason for the movie being crappy, when actually those were two different things. And then those actors just get completely thrown under the bus and like fed to the wolves.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, all of this kind of boils down to people are so uncomfortable with things that portray a different world than the way they see it.
Well, not just that, but also that corporations are so willing to take advantage of that.
Yeah, just to get buzz.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's happening. Let us know your thoughts.
And let us know if you have any sapphic media that you think deserves more attention.
Yeah, we will definitely check it out and talk about it. If you have not checked out our new Patreon, please do. We will have all of this normal content on there for our subscribers for free. And then we are also launching a new project, a little bit of a spinoff of this, that will be for paid subscribers, but for a very, very low fee. And so we would love for you to subscribe to our page and look for announcements of what is coming soon.
Yep, you can find us by searching Queer Kid, Straight Mom, all first letters capitalized, and we will pop right up on your Patreon feed.
Happy Pride, everybody. Catch you next time.
If you found this episode interesting, informative, amusing, please review and follow us on your podcasting platform of choice. Getting those reviews and follows really helps us show up more in the algorithm and be able to reach more people to help them. You can find us on social media, Instagram, and Threads at queerkid.straightmom, Blue Sky at qksm.bsky.social, and Facebook at Queer Kid Straight Mom. We are no longer on Twitter.